Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Dr. Ravi Iyer, physician and president of Iyer Clinic and the CEO of ActivPower. Please enjoy Dr. Ravi Iyer. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today I am here with Ravi Iyer, physician, president of Iyer Clinic and the CEO of ActivPower. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, Marie. Great to see you.
Good to see you, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Before we dive into more creative conversations, why don't you take a couple of minutes and let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
I'm a physician. I've been a physician for 41 years. I got my license in 1983. So, I run a clinic, a primary care clinic in Northern Virginia called the Iyer Clinic. We have offices in two separate counties, Loudoun and Fairfax County. 3 offices. So you see quite a few patients. We have an active roster of about 4,000 to 5,000 patients. We see somewhere around 7,000 patient encounters per year.
Wow.
That translates into a volume of something like 30 patients per day. So, but that's just in a nutshell what I do. On paper, that is the paper designation of my work. But the actual work I do is I empower people. I empower people, and I empower people to find, to transcend the circumstances and be able to live the possibilities of their life. And that's basically what I do all the time. Whether I'm seeing a sore throat or managing a heart failure patient or enabling a mother to negotiate an abusive relationship, it's always the same story. It's basically empowerment. To this particular, and in the way I look at it is my gift is to empower. That is, and I have a lot of talents that I bring to the service of my gift. I am eloquent, I write, I'm able to communicate well. I'm quite creative. I have several inventions on medications that I have developed over the time, but they are all things that I do to do my work of empowerment. So whether it's a pain medicine that I invented to relieve the arthritic pain of my mom that then became very popular in the clinic and then got an FDA approval and became an OTC drug. But it started with, okay, how do I get my mom to sleep in the night? And then it went on from there. A friend's dog got injured, and it was a police dog, and he had to pull it out of competition. And he reached out to me to develop something that will help the dog recover and build back muscle. And I built that, and that developed into a supplement that again got FDA approval and then became very popular all over the world as Atlas, which ActivPower, a company I started, does that. And then during COVID pandemic, we found that some of the ingredients of Atlas had ingredients that could actually combat and help patients recover. So I actually modified Atlas to help some of my arthritis patients. But then I noticed that the arthritis patients who were taking the human version of Atlas, which we call Zeus, when they were taking it and they got COVID, and after they got recovered from COVID, they bounced right back faster than other patients who are not taking Zeus.
Wow.
So most patients would get infected with the virus, clear the virus in about 2 weeks, and then they would drag on for about 6 to 8 or 12
Hmm.
weeks with low energy levels. But the patients that were taking Zeus would clear the virus and be back to this where they were before they got infected in no time. So we started giving all the patients Zeus for 90 days
Hmm.
after they got COVID, and all of them would recover fast because Zeus would help the body recover from the inflammatory damage of COVID. So all of those things uh, built up over the years, but they're all focused on this one central theme of empowerment.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, and it sounds like so much problem solving on the kind of back end to show up to empower people to help them traverse the challenges that they're navigating in their life.
Yeah, but see, I'm I'm very transdisciplinary in my approach, where
Mm,
coming to the point, like when I got my physician's degree in 1983 in India, um, within a year after that, I got very frustrated with practicing medicine in India. And I decided that, you know what, I'm not going to practice, but I want to go into research. So
mm,
I went into research and got a doctoral degree. And from there, I came to Harvard and I was doing basic research for several years at Harvard, uh,
mhm,
managing gene cloning. My doctoral degree was in peptide chemistry,
mm,
protein chemistry, vaccine development. So I
yeah.
learned a lot of the Breaking Bad stuff. I learned the basic hardcore chemistry.
Mhm,
Uh, so I was gifted with a good mind and an ability to analyze and
mm,
intellectually conceptualize problems.
mhm.
And I acquired these tools over the years that later on allowed me the tremendous amount of breadth and flexibility to move from one field to the other without having to have an army of consultants holding my hand along the way.
Right.
So I had a great repertoire, great bandwidth uh,
Hmm.
to allow me the creativity to do that.
Yeah.
So so one of the things is tools do not make you creative. I
Hmm.
want people to understand that. Just because there are many doctors like me
Hmm.
who have the skills like me, actually are better than me in certain aspects, who are not creative.
Hmm.
Creativity does not arise out of tools.
Mm.
Creativity arises out of the ability to be internally silent and focused and allow life to show up in a way that it shows options that you can then pick and choose and then use your tools to manipulate.
Mm. I love that. That's what a great explanation of creativity, that internal quiet and silence to then use the tools that you have. Yeah.
Yeah, I call that the eye of the storm.
Mm. Hmm.
See, life life presents to us, and I frequently tell patients who are struggling with circumstances to understand this, that life presents to us as impacts upon our senses. There are photons striking the retina of our eye,
Mm-hmm.
giving us color
Mm.
and light. And there are molecules striking the eardrum. Wind strikes the eardrum and gives us sound. There
Yeah.
are molecules wafting up our nose, hitting the olfactory neurons and giving us sense of smell. there are molecules falling on our tongue and giving us taste, other molecules impacting our skin and giving us touch. So our five senses are literally being impacted. Life hits us.
Yeah.
We don't think it just hits, but it is actually hitting us.
Yeah.
All right. So life is hitting us all the time. And so that is one aspect of life, just the impact of perception. But then that alone is not what we experience as life. We take that perception and we make a story, we make a judgment, we make we compare it with some other past memory and make an assumption. So that narrative, that's a construct, that's a created construct. And this created construct that we have has fixed and dynamic elements. For example, each species has a creative construct, a certain boundary of the range of constructs that they can create that is unique to the species. For example, the kind of impressions and narratives and stories that a bumblebee would make is different than what a dog would make, or a cat would make, or a human would make. And so those are species specific narratives. So that's a boundary, a box.
Yeah.
Now, within that box, that particular individual creature makes certain unique narratives that out of the species specific, it has an additional layer of unique narratives that it makes that are specific for it as an individual. That arises out of its past experiences and so on and so forth. Right? So the reason why you and I think that reality is the same for us is because we both share the same species specific narratives that we each are given to create. So we have an illusion that my reality and your reality is the same.
Right.
Because generally, red light will hit your retina in the same way red light hits my retina. So the photon of red light will strike it in the same way. A sugar molecule will strike your tongue the same way as tongue strikes me. But then there are each one of us has a slightly different sensitivity. So some people will experience red light more intensely or sugar more intensely than another person.
Yeah.
That's the individual variation of the species commonality of sugar for both of us.
That's so fascinating.
Yes. So now if you talk about creativity, creativity comes out of, so this total narratives and constructs we create is the storm around us. The sensory storm, and it's spinning around us. And we fool ourselves by thinking that this narrative is reality. It is not. But right in the center of the storm is just you silently receiving the stimulus.
Yeah.
And if you stand in that silence, then life itself will show you how to create. So life will show you. See, as long as you are standing in the narratives, it is the narratives that is going to dictate how life shows up for you. Because the narratives are like a jaundiced film, a yellow filter. So everything looks yellow.
Yeah.
So your narratives prevent life from ever showing up the way life wants to show up.
Right.
So if you want to be creative, you have to be able to stand in the eye of the storm.
Yeah. And that can be very challenging for many people to do that.
Yeah, but you got to remember something. If you want to live, you have to stand there. If you want to be in the prison of your narratives, you are welcome to do that too. But narratives essentially are a prison.
Yeah.
They give you the convenience of easy solutions,
Mm,
and
yeah.
they give you the convenience of safety,
Mm-hmm.
of avoidance of risk, because
Sure.
you don't have to do the hard work of figuring out life each time it presents. You can just take a past response and say, oh yeah, I got it, I know how to deal with it.
Right. Well, I'm so curious in your life experience, what's your earliest recollection of being in the eye of the storm or your earliest memory of being creative?
14. I was 14 years old.
14. And what is that?
So I was born with ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, I was always struggling with the storm.
Mm-hmm.
So, but unlike most other ADHD patients or people, had I was blessed with insight. I could see that I was struggling with the storm.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who are struggling in the storm are not able to see that they are struggling in a storm. They don't see, if you think that you are the storm, there is absolutely no way that you can ever escape the storm.
Sure. Yeah.
So most people whose mind is going a million miles a minute are not able to see that they have a mind that is going. They think that they are going million miles a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not that they possess those thoughts, it's the thoughts possessing them.
Mm-hmm.
And when thoughts possess you, there is no escape.
Yeah.
I was fortunate through some grace of God, whatever you kind of call it, some higher power. I had the faintest glimpse that this storm that I'm having to deal with is not me. It
Mm.
is something that is layered upon me.
Mm-hmm.
So I started asking myself, what is it? Why is it that I feel that the storm is not me? It is, but I have to deal with it because it's like I have to struggle against this current of thoughts. And
Yeah.
how do I find myself? How do I find sanctuary? How do I
Mm-hmm.
find how do I find release? How do I find peace? Because
Mm-hmm.
it is a storm.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a society that did not know that there was something called ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a time when ADHD was not known.
Yeah.
So all I heard was that, hey, Ravi is distracted. Ravi is not able to live up to his potential. Ravi is brilliant, but he can't, uh,
Mm.
he's not able to achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that was frustrating, to put it very mildly, but
Yeah.
yeah, but it was, I struggled with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the journey and what that experience was like to have that self-reflection that you are not the storm, that you are
Yeah, but
separate from it.
that reflection only told me that something, that I am not the storm. It didn't tell me how to get to who I am and be
Sure.
away.
Sure.
So I was
Right.
trapped in it, but I knew that this is not me.
Yeah. You had the
But as
step
long as I
one.
knew this was, yeah, it's just step one. It was an important step. So the
Yeah.
next insight came when I was watching some elephants. In India,
Mm.
there are elephants. And
Mm-hmm.
so the elephants, the trunk of elephants, they go all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Because the elephant knows the world through its trunk.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be parading down the street, and they'll reach out and grab a fruit from the roadside stall, you know, get into all kinds of mischief. So the elephant keepers, the mahouts,
Mm-hmm.
they had a strategy. They gave the elephant a chain to hold.
Oh,
So
uh-huh.
when the trunk is holding the chain, it can't go investigating other things.
Right.
So when I looked at that, I had this flash of insight that all I needed to control the storm was, I saw the elephants wandering trunk like the storm that I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
I just needed to find a chain.
Mm.
I needed to find a chain, an inner chain to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
So then I knew, okay, this is my way to get to the eye.
Mm-hmm.
The chain will take me to the eye. And now I needed to find how to do it. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know
Yeah.
what was the chain that I could use.
Yeah.
So I had I I used to have tremendous hyper focus. So I would read, and when I read, I would just get so absorbed into it, and the rest of the world will and the storm would disappear.
Mm-hmm.
But I soon realized that just getting lost in books, while it was enormously knowledge giving to
Mm-hmm.
me, also meant that I was secluding myself from the rest of the world for large segments of the day, and I
Mm-hmm.
could not possibly do that. So I had to figure out a way to uh, to have a portable kind of chain that I could actually hold on to while I was doing my work.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not realize it then, but at 14, I started internally repeating just one word.
Mm-hmm.
And I used the word like a chain.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
Later, I realized that the Gregorian monks, for centuries earlier, had found the same thing. They had chants,
Yeah, right.
and so did the Buddhists. But I
Yeah.
didn't know any of them. I didn't know Buddhists existed, and I didn't know. All I knew was when I would. So I independently fall into by
Mm.
very trial and error, serendipitously struggling with the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came across a book that taught me about breath control
Yeah.
and watching breath, and that became mindful awareness. And that's very soon, within about 5 years. By the time I was 22,
Mm-hmm.
I was very good at that, and I became very good at being centered in the
Mm.
eye of the storm, even in the midst of work. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's Thank you for sharing that journey. That's pretty incredible to be able to have followed it and watched animals and internalized, oh, how
Yeah,
do I?
I still wonder how that happened, because that was very that was that is unbelievably. I call that one of my miracles. That for
Yeah.
me to see an elephant and then have an idea and to be available, to recognize the insight there. That is one thing. Then
Mhm.
to follow through with that and take it to the next step was completely another thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of things could have gone awry along the way, but it did. And that is what I call the miracle. That is what I call a
Yeah.
higher, being guided by a higher power.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for sharing this glimpse into your life and experience. And I'm curious when, the number of people that you see in your clinics or just work with in the other work that you do, I imagine you come across people who really struggle to be in the eye, to be in that space of peacefulness or not in the chaos, but in the stillness. How do you encourage others to find that space for themselves?
So when I first started doing this when I started becoming good at it, I started trying to communicate it in words to people.
Mm-hmm.
To my friends who struggled, I would try to communicate it. And I found that it was not helpful because I, when I gave words and I tried to describe, do this, it'll work, they were not feeling it. They could
Yeah.
not get it. And then I realized the reason why that it would not work that way.
Mm.
See, when I'm speaking right now, you are only partly listening to me.
Hmm.
There is a voice in you that is telling you what I am telling you.
Hmm. Okay.
And that voice is what you're listening to.
Hmm.
And as I became good at centering myself, I started recognizing something that it accidentally, one day I remember I was working with someone who was deeply despondent.
Mm-hmm.
And I I kept trying to encourage, and all the positive talk wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally gave up and I said, why don't you just sit there?
Mm.
And I'm just going to sit. Let's just be quiet for some time. And while we were quiet, instead of trying to get that person to calm down, I decided to just enter the I myself within me.
Mm.
And when I centered myself,
Mm-hmm.
they in resonance became centered.
Yeah.
And at that moment, when I then started speaking,
Mm.
the words I spoke were the words they spoke to themselves,
Mm.
that inner voice.
Mm-hmm.
So, and from that point onwards, I recognized something fundamental about communication.
Mm.
Communication is not just simply speaking.
Right.
When I speak, I have to create a space of vulnerability and enter that space within myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I approach people grounded in that space of vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
it frees them up to become vulnerable and they enter that same shared space of vulnerability.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And two people, when they're vulnerable, there is communion,
Yeah.
and heart speaks to heart and communication happens.
Mm.
Communication happens only when there is communion.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
a community of people are not just a collection of bodies,
Mm-hmm.
they are a collection of hearts in communion speaking the same speech.
Mm. Nice. Absolutely. I am a dance movement therapist, so somatic resonance that you're speaking of and the heart connection and communication resonates with me. I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I just have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
When I'm creative, I have no sense of who I am at that moment.
Hmm.
It's like as if um, the universe flows through me. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
explain this. When I'm creating a medicine, I all the medicines I've created,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't approach it intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
I approached it through feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And the compositions, the ratios, and all of that was all through feeling, almost like cooking,
Mm-hmm.
like a chef putting agents together. Their measure is their senses.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's as you're talking, I can experience or have a image of what that is to go with a
So, so,
feeling.
so when, so this is the problem. All right, there are two aspects that human beings have. We have feeling
Mm-hmm.
and we have thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking is not feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So feeling is completely in the realm of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking is completely in the realm of analytical story.
Mm-hmm.
Life, joy, happiness, freedom does not reside in the analytical story.
Mm-hmm.
it resides in feeling.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, I'll say my first kiss,
Mm.
the experience when I'm experiencing the first kiss,
Mm-hmm.
I am not describing it at that moment. I'm not
Sure.
creating a story. I'm not
Right.
trying to tell somebody about it.
Yeah.
I pure experience, and in that moment, I have no sense of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity is also the same way.
Yeah.
Creativity is all about feeling. It is not about analysis.
Mm-hmm.
It all of that comes later.
Right. Yeah.
It comes later when you're trying to tell it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like example, a person straps on a wingsuit and just jumps off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
When he is falling and flying, he's not thinking about it at that time,
Right.
experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why they want to do it again and again, because during that time of flight and fall, during that death-defying plunge
Yeah.
and safe landing, they experience an out-of-body experience of
Mm.
pure feeling. And
Yeah.
that gives them an expansive, they become in the eye of the storm. They enter
Mm.
the eye of the storm. And then after landing, they come back and tell everyone else about it. Then it's all story. Then it is
Yeah.
all story.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I appreciate the distinction between feeling and thinking and that
So
explanation.
everything that is precious in life is all only in the realm of feeling.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Everything that is decaying and dead and stilted and fixed in life is all about speech, about story.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I could absolutely talk longer, but we are at the end of the
I don't know
interview.
if you got what you wanted.
I absolutely did. It was fantastic. And if people want to learn more about the work that you do, how could they go about doing that?
Oh, they can. I have a website. It's called www.driyer.com.
Great.
And they can navigate from that website to every other place that I work on, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my ActivPower thing, my clinic. If they want to come and see me in my clinic, you can come. The books I'm writing,
Okay.
my future projects, all of that is there. My speaking, I do quite a bit of speaking. So
Wonderful. Well, I'll put that in show notes so people have very easy access. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.